All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. The panel now is discussing the role of academia as quantum ecosystem builders. I'll start by introducing our moderator, Dr. John Sawyer, the Executive Director of the Mid-Atlantic Quantum Alliance, which supports the growth of a vibrant and inclusive regional quantum ecosystem built on the foundation of one of the world's largest concentration of quantum expertise and capabilities. The MQA enables a wide range of collaboration between its 38 and growing members of quantum expertise and programs from government, industry, academia, and the nonprofit sector to accelerate scientific discovery, develop and transition technologies, and prepare the quantum workforce. Dr. Sawyer also serves as the Director of Strategic Research Initiatives for the University of Maryland, where he builds and manages major programs and partnerships that enhance the impact and visibility of the university. Happy to have John here with us and the rest of the panel. I'll pass it to you, John.
Thank you very much. So it is a privilege to be here. Hopefully we will be providing a lot more energy and get everyone excited, especially in the post-lunch comas. I am wearing bright colors, at least on my feet. Many of you probably can't see this, but this is Old Bay. So we really are very proud of the Chesapeake region. We have an incredible ecosystem here, so 38 members and counting. Across all of those different sectors with incredibly deep quantum expertise. The other thing that wasn't in my bio, though, is that the MQA is really focused on the international collaborations and collaborating with the other hubs of excellence in quantum. So I am incredibly delighted to be joined up here with a number of my colleagues and friends and hopeful collaborators, if we're not already doing so. So I will have each of them introduce themselves briefly, and then we have a series of questions about how the academic institutions can really help to support industry, grow ecosystems. And one of the nice things about this panel is I think you're going to hear a very interesting diversity of understandings of what ecosystems are and what those roles are. Because that's the wonderful thing about ecosystems is it's in the eye of the beholder. It can mean many, many different things to different people, but there's enough of a Venn diagram that I think we can be very successful. So immediately to my left, we have Dr. Peter Fisher, who is Thomas A. Frank Professor of Physics and Head of the Department of Physics at MIT. Next, we have Mr. Ken Ulman, who is the University of Maryland's Chief Strategy Officer for Economic Development, as well as the President of the Terrapin Development Company. And then at the end, we have Dr. Peter Turner, who is CEO of the Sydney Quantum Academy, or as I always call them, just the SQA. So why don't we start with you, Peter? Just a brief introduction, and then we'll get into the questions.
So I'm at MIT. I actually teach quantum mechanics at the undergraduate level. And I'm also in charge of all research computing on campus, both shared research resources, both classical and quantum.
Hi, I am sitting up here with 3 doctors, 2 Peters, and I'm just Ken. My daughters would be very proud of me using a Barbie line. It was very exciting. But I'm Ken Ulman, Chief Strategy Officer for Economic Development at the University of Maryland, College Park. And as John said, we're in our Terrapin Development Company, which is our spin-out real estate company owned by our foundation and the university to deliver the Greater College Park Initiative and our Discovery District, really focused on building out the ecosystem of a great place of innovation. I look forward to the conversation.
And hi, Peter Turner, CEO of Sydney Quantum Academy and a quantum information theorist. As a Canadian originally, I'm ashamed to say that I have to wear a hat and sweater when I come down here now because I'm in Australia now and I'm finding it cold. Very briefly, SQA is a joint venture between 4, let's say, quantum research active universities in Sydney and this New South Wales state government. On a 5-year, $30 million project, largely on quantum training and engagement. We can get into that as the questions go on, I guess. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So I will ask a common question and then just go down the line, unless anyone has a burning response, in which case jump out and try and get ahead of the other panelists. So what can academic institutions do to help industry leverage their world-class research and development facilities, the expertise that we bring to bear, in order to solve real-world problems?
Yeah, so resources at a university and in business are very, very different. Timescales are also very different. I think my university's been involved in quantum mechanics since the 1930s, and I think we will always be involved in quantum mechanics and quantum computing. I think we'd do it if there were no money around, because it's what we do. So in a certain sense, our time horizons can be very long. Our faculty typically stay for a very long time. And there's a kind of a natural 5-year time scale, which is the time of a graduate career. So the imperative is really our instruction and research efforts. Also, it's just, as a former head of the physics department, it's impossible to make anyone do anything. So, they're just going to do what they want. Whereas in most businesses, that maybe is less true. And so in partnering, I think one of the main things is just clarity around expectations and timescales. And the times I've seen things go south have been when that hasn't been in place. And I can give an example or two, but I'll hand it over to Ken.
Great. And, Peter gave a lot of great answers about from the internal aspects of a university, which the University of Maryland, similar physics department, wonderful, brilliant people doing fundamental work. I think if you look back at the universities in our country, some have been more aggressive for longer in actively working with the private sector. The University of Maryland College Park, we have a wonderful trajectory where a few decades ago, we really started being much more outward focused, a lot of work with our federal government partners. And you think of something at the University of Maryland like the Joint Quantum Institute with major federal funding that led to fundamental research that ended up leading to a successful spin-out IonQ, which you heard over the past couple days, different thinking about IonQ. And if you think about what we have now done at the university with people like me and John, who get to work with the brilliant physicists in our ecosystem, I think ecosystem is an overused word sometimes, but because of the nascent industry of quantum computing, I think ecosystems are really important. So whether it's the workforce development, whether it's our quantum startup foundry trying to offer resources to young startups, whether it's our new QLab that, a user facility that's opening up, IonQ's quantum computing to users. We're still in the early stages of figuring out exactly the best answer to your question, but it's a question that we think about every day. What else are we doing? What could we be doing to be a great partner with both classic research and a private industry?
Yeah, I'd add to that maybe, and speaking more in my experience in the UK and Australia, academia can modernize PhD training a little bit more. Cohort-based training, exposure to transferable skills and these kinds of things that industry connects with more readily. As Peter said, you can't make academics do anything, but you can entice academics to do things, and as you go down towards students, it becomes easier, I think. And we've seen success with that in programs that we run in the SQA and in the doctoral training centers, for example, in the UK that I had experience with before that as well. And we're seeing that in the intake of students now who are kind of coming, like I can speak as a PhD physicist. I didn't even know what intellectual property was when I did my PhD just 15 years ago. And now we're seeing students come in who they know what that is, and they're even expecting to work with industry now. So you can modernize the programs and start attracting people and getting them their mindset to interact with industry more.
Yeah. Just following on that, I have noticed in the last 5 years, and this is an old guy talking, students are really different. Just fairly recently, because of their access to information and the ways they communicate. And we're thinking about that a lot at MIT, like most universities. I could tell a sophomore working with me who maybe hasn't even had quantum mechanics, I want you to take the next 2 weeks and learn and be able to explain to me what a qubit does. And they would go to Wikipedia, they would watch videos, they would access all kinds of materials that I simply would not have had when I was a student. And they will make a very credible stab at it. What they do less is synthesize across, different areas. And so I think really recognizing that the next generation that's coming up now into this field, and they're very excited about quantum, almost as much about AI, maybe more, recognizing that they learn in a different way and being open to that. Wikipedia is a really great resource. And I wouldn't have said that a year ago. I just used to just dismiss it. And, don't, that's crap. But it is a really good place to start.
I asked ChatGPT what a qubit was this morning. So on my drive in, I learned about a qubit. Okay. Yeah, I know that much now.
So you're a young person.
I am, in my mind. Yes.
Good.
That is true. I know Ken. Yeah. So actually with that, I'm going to ask a controversial question, which was not in the pre-approved list, of if ChatGPT and the internet and all of these fantastic tools are giving our students what they need, what is the value of the academic institution? How are we actually serving industry, the economy, society by having our students for 4 to 10 years, depending on, or 3, I guess?
I can start. So we polled at our conference, which I may plug a bit later. 2 years ago, the industry delegates that were there about their workforce hiring, and it was still dominated by PhD level training in quantum. This is largely from quantum startups, but it was a clear signal. Of course, we talk about supply chains and all these other skills and things like where students or people that are being upskilled can find that information, and it's definitely true. And it might change in time, but we're certainly not there yet, and it's still 50% of these quantum startups are hiring PhDs out of quantum programs. So I think that's here to stay for a while.
I'll give a controversial answer. I mean, my view is my university serves the students. They are the reason we are there, both the undergraduates and graduate students. The foundational relationship, I think, at a research university is a relationship between a faculty member and the PhD students they're supervising. If those relationships are not healthy, the right things aren't going to happen. And then how people learn, how information is communicated, those are details. The fundamental thing about training students is the relationship with the faculty, and that was apparent during the pandemic, because the whole physicality of a university is that it pushes people together, so that every day you're seeing in person a few hundred people, and that's what it's all about. If it were simply a matter of training workforce, the military actually does huge amounts of training. They do it very effectively. They do it mostly remotely. And if that were all, we could do it very different ways. But those of us at universities really believe that it's really the in-person conversation. And boy, if you don't have to, if you can get the base information for whatever conversation you're going to have in some more efficient way, that's great. But it is what we're doing now.
And I would add, and this is after President Pines had all of us in leadership spend 8 hours on Tuesday in an all-day session on AI and what AI means for an institute of higher education. I think I would argue that institutes of higher education are more important than ever as we look at guardrails and ethics and how we look at this uptake of AI. I mean, if you think about it, MOOCs were going to put universities out of business 20 years ago. I mean, I think the physical bringing people together with technology, that blend, and COVID also made people think about a little bit differently. But I think areas that have active, strong institutes of higher education who are also focused, looking externally, working with nonprofit, federal government, and private sector partners are the places that will win the next 10, 20, 30 years because of how quickly things are changing.
Awesome, thank you. So many years ago, I guess 4 years ago at this point, the MQA launched its entrepreneurship work group, and they actually practiced what they preached, which is customer discovery. And they went out and talked to a whole bunch of quantum startups around the world to identify what it is that they really needed. So number one, talent, right? We absolutely need the students and the deep technical expertise. Number two was access to the unique sets of equipment for whichever quantum technology that they had. So what role do you see for the academic institutions in enabling these startups, enabling industry to be able to do that at a more reasonable cost and sort of buy down the risk?
I'll pass to Ken.
It's a great question. And frankly, looking at, every place on the spectrum of creating the next great company and where the gaps are, right? And, it was pointed out what motivates faculty, what motivates a student, how do you align access to capital, access to space? Is it a space issue? Is it having a user facility that allows people to go in and work on optical tables? What is it that is the gap, and then really working to break down that barrier? Is it the conflict of interest policy that is jamming everybody up because of the way it's being interpreted? What is it at that point? Not that anybody has any issues with the COI policies at their institutions and tech transfer, but and really systematically looking at it. And universities are not generally set up that way, right? There's a shared governance model on the academic side, which is wonderful in many ways and also has some challenges. And so who is your champion? And it really has to come from the top in sort of setting a tone and breaking down multiple barriers. And I think, at Maryland, we're doing a lot of things right, but, we have a lot of work to do every day to make sure we're answering those questions, because things are happening so quickly. Folks will go somewhere else, or they might not have to go anywhere. They might be able to be virtual and access resources in another way. So when it comes to economic development, I see so many folks from the DMV here, Maryland, Virginia, who are here thinking about, how do we fill office buildings? How do we fill data centers? Why does somebody have to go anywhere these days? And how does that come together from, that ecosystem? Anyway, thank you.
So, the question was, what can academia do to support startups? Every university is different, but intellectual property, approaches, it always comes up. And it's a problem that I think is, at this point, too hard to solve when the universities are being incentivized to, unfortunately, protect some of that IP because of the funding schemes and whatnot. So I'm not sure. I think there was an exercise in Australia recently where they tried to standardize some of that, and it's just very, very difficult to do. So I'm not sure. That's kind of an obvious one. I would give it an example of a program that we have seen work. Again, this is actually from the UK, but something we're hoping to institute in Australia, is the idea of entrepreneurial fellowships. So supporting, say, postdoc level people who have some IP, free to work with it, and freeing them up, paying a salary, removing the research milestone targets, and saying your milestones now are around building a business case for this idea that you have. And there's an example of a company, Quantum Brilliance in Australia, where that happened just because an enlightened head of physics allowed a postdoc to do that. We could maybe start looking at ways to formalize that more in universities or other schemes.
I think the best thing a university can do, the IP is tricky because, most IP doesn't have much value, but you don't know that.
Universities don't say that.
Yeah, and they're just paranoid that they're going to give away a key patent for HDTV, which floated a large part of MIT for a few years. So I think that's just always going to be a mess. I think really good guidance to would-be entrepreneurs is a good idea, because most startups don't succeed, and not every idea is a good idea. And having a mechanism for a knowledgeable person that a would-be young entrepreneur trusts to be able to say, look, I know you think this is a good idea. I don't see a business case. Are you really sure this is what you want to do? We have a venture mentoring service that tries to do that. I'm not sure how successful they are. But I come back to the fundamental thing that happens at a university, which is the faculty and students learning together. And the university could encourage entrepreneurship for those that really look like they have a chance. But at least at my university, I would never want to see that be ahead of the relationship between the faculty and students, and postdoctoral scholars as well.
Yeah, I think that is a pretty common perspective for academics. At University of Maryland, as much as we like to tout all of the great technology, all of the amazing things that we're doing, all the economic development, our number one product are our students, and making sure that we are creating good citizens who are going to be functional. So I think that really is the basis. Citizens.
That's a good word.
Yeah. So I mean, we are a land-grant public university where we take that role in society incredibly important. So we kind of touched on this a little bit. I do want to leave just a couple of minutes for questions from the audience. So be thinking, and hopefully I'll be able to see you even though I have the bright light in my eyes. But as we learned through COVID, there's a ton that we can do online. There's there's so many different tools, there's so many ways of collaborating. We're able to have joint workshops with Australia, which is ridiculous as long as you can get past the time zone differences. So what does that really mean for ecosystem development? What is the role of geography, which I know this might be very painful for some of our local and state economic development folks, but what does it really mean to be an ecosystem in quantum?
Like, why did you fly all the way here? We're glad you did, but why?
I'm going to see mom and dad up north next week. I mean, the role of place is absolutely important, both on the training side. We're finding, I talked about kind of modernizing the traditional physics PhD for a concrete example, which is more cohort training. Again, this is less of an innovation in North America, but more so in the UK and Australia. And SQA is lucky enough to have space literally in Central Station in Sydney. And being able to get students from 4 universities to come to that space, we absolutely see the value of that. At the same time, like a lot of institutions, we're doing things virtually as well. But to connect with the industry component of it, that space is extraordinarily valuable for SQA running events with industry as well. So day to day, I think post-COVID, I think a lot of industries seen, there's a lot more people are working from home. And I know that's probably changing, but slowly. And I think it has partly changed permanently. But when we do run an event physically in that space, it's extraordinarily well attended because there's that swing back. And industry shows up to those kinds of things. And now you've got the academics and the students and the industry in the same physical space. So yeah, important for us for sure.
Well, I think there's a reason why in a lot of economic development, people talk about building cities around eds and meds, right? So places that people still physically have to come together. Now, we talked about hospitals are different because you do physically have to go there for certain things, but obviously there's telehealth and different medicine, that's putting the healthcare under different kind of pressures. But from a higher ed perspective, the fact that students and professors still physically come together, at least most days, does give you sort of this, as long as you're staying ahead of it, gives you this sort of place of energy. And if you look around our country, it's not an accident that Boston is thriving. You've got a little university that we've all heard of that brings lots of brilliant people together every day, and another one across the river and another one next to you, and there's a reason why then you look around and you see lots of great things happening in Boston. A lot of great things happening around here. I know I've seen, our fellow universities, George Mason, Virginia Tech, building out a campus in Northern Virginia, what we're doing in Maryland. You'd be hard pressed to pick a place that is thriving when it comes to innovation economy that doesn't have the universities at the heart of that. So I do think leaning into that, while we're staying ahead of the curve, figuring out what are those drivers. Again, getting back to the MOOCs, it is still true that you can get it's now true, you can get a very good education online, but there are still, what are those tangible things that you still need to physically come together for, and really leaning into what makes that special.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I think the remote contact, remote learning, Zoom, things like that, are in addition, or should be in addition to the physical presence, and it's a powerful addition.
Excellent, thank you very much. So I have left less time than I meant to for Q&A from the audience, but we do have 3 minutes. So, Jade? Okay. Yep. Oh.
Yeah, they do that.
Yep.
It's like running a baseball team.
So just to reiterate the question in case anyone couldn't hear it, it was really redirecting the attention from just the focus on students to making sure that we have enough of the instructors and the faculty, and how is each of your organizations and institutions addressing that issue? Are we going to be able to produce the workforce that industry needs?
So, in the SQA, we've got over now 100 quantum experts. You can go to our website and go have a look at them all, kind of amalgamation across the 4 universities. And then you look at some of the government projections for quantum workforce needs over 5, 10, 20 years, and we've done the math. That's not enough supervisors to hit these kinds of numbers that we need. So, your problem is absolutely critical going forward. The other pressure on that, I think possibly what you were describing, is that industry is now taking a lot of faculty out of the supervisory pool. So yeah, it's a big issue, and I think my experience in Australia, this is going beyond SQA, but we're looking to national strategies that are going to have research components that will entice and incentivize universities to hire more faculty. We're hoping for going forward. So these national quantum strategies will hopefully be a mechanism for that.
So I think one of the other programs that is worth highlighting in Australia that you were talking about earlier today is the co-mentorship with industry. So that is definitely an increasing focus across a lot of different institutions, where you still need to have that academic anchor, but how do you leverage the knowledge and the experience and the expertise that has escaped academia to go actually be productive in creating widgets and tools, but also making sure that they are helping to develop the next generation. So, additional?
Yeah, I think in answer to your question, you know, faculty life is kind of tough. Resources are always scarce. We select faculty largely on their inability to say no to doing things, so everybody is very busy. You know, from what I understand of the field, and this has been a very good meeting to get an overview, is that they're going to be nowhere near enough people going into quantum information science to meet the need. And, you know, tough. You know, because the fact of the matter is students are going to do what they want to do too. They get to choose what they study. I think we have a huge problem in this country that we don't have enough just like real electrical engineers, just people who are going to make radios. Everything that's happening right now in this room is happening because of radio. Wi-Fi is a radio. And that is really hurting. And it's kind of the backbone of everything we do. So there is a shortage of talent all over the place. And, you know, that I think is going to be kind of a selector in what businesses succeed and don't, is the ability to keep and retain talent. And it's just like baseball.
And unfortunately, I see I am getting the hook. So I want to say thank you very much to our panelists. This was a
Thanks,
great
everybody.
discussion. Thank you.